Hi guys! As yesterday's video was a very brief introduction, I thought I would start my first proper video by telling you my care story and how I got here. In January 2006, my mum was diagnosed with an oligodendrogloma, which is a type of brain tumour. She was given a year to live, but she actually lived until April 2011, so she beat the expectations that she had, and she died in April 2011. After that, my dad, who was separated from my mum at that time, he basically told me I had to go and live with him and that I didn't have a choice and I couldn't live with my stepdad. I went to live with my dad and my stepmum. I lived there for a year, and during that year it was very difficult. I don't want to go into details because I don't feel like it's nice to slag people off on the internet, but he was quite abusive physically and emotionally, and eventually he kicked us out, me and my two sisters who had been living there a year longer than I had, and we went to social services and said, our dad's just kicked us out, what do we do? And we got to social services I think 5 minutes before their offices closed. If we were 5 minutes later, we wouldn't have had anywhere to go. So we went and they said, okay, so tell us what's happened. We told them. My sisters were crying and I was just there trying to hold everything together. Then they said, okay, we'll try and find you a carer to go to tonight, because we had nowhere to go. So we eventually went up to Wisbeach that night, and we met these two carers called Jane and Peter, and they were the two loveliest people I've ever met. They were meant to take in kids who were 9 and under. None of us were under 9 years old, but they had to take us because it was an emergency. We got put into what they call an emergency placement, which is somewhere you go if you have nowhere else to go. Yeah, we lived for a week with them, and then we came back from school one Monday, and Peter was just like, you're moving tomorrow. And so the next day we moved to Northamptonshire, and that is where I have been for the last 3 years, in this one placement. Always been in this bedroom. This is my space, and I've been here from the age of 15 to 18, so I've spent a lot of my teenage life here, and this is what I would consider my home, and I will continue to until, my carer has enough of me and kicks me out. There was actually a point in the 3 years where an aunt and uncle said they'd take us in. We'd had this massive meeting with all of my family members, all of who we don't have contact with anymore, or I don't have contact with anymore, and one aunt and uncle said, okay, we feel like we can take all 3 of you on. They decided to go for foster caring. They went halfway through the process and then all of a sudden just said, you know what, we can't handle it. And at the time I was just so angry. We'd been kicked out by our dad, our mum had died, and they couldn't handle it. I mean, I'm sure there's more to it than that, but at the time I was just so furious. We're these 3 young children in care with no one else to turn to, and you've just backed off as well. It was awful. We continued living with our carer, and when my sisters left because they didn't really get on, I continued living here, and like I said before, I lived here until I was 18, and then my carer said, if you need to keep living here, if you don't feel like you're independent enough to leave, you can stay. And so that is what they call the staying put scheme, where children over 18 who feel like they are not independent enough to leave can stay with their carers if their carers are okay with it. I do pay rent, this is my room, I am kind of like a permanent member of the household, and this is my home. I've been happy here for 3 years now, and hopefully many more.